When the morning breaks and the first light touches the earth, that's not just another day, it's an invitation. Heaven is calling. The Spirit of God is saying, rise and pray. For in those quiet moments, before the noise of the world begins, the presence of God is waiting to meet you. The morning isn't meant to be rushed through. It's meant to be entered into with reverence, with expectation, with a heart ready to hear from the Lord. Prayer is not just a duty, it's a divine encounter. It's where heaven meets earth, where the heart of man touches the heart of God. And there's something about the morning hour, something sacred, something powerful. It's in those early moments that your spirit is most sensitive, your heart most tender, and your mind most open. The distractions haven't yet crowded in, and the world hasn't yet demanded your attention. That's why the Spirit calls, rise and pray. Because the first voice you should hear is not the voice of man, but the voice of God. When you begin your day in prayer, you set the direction for your entire day. You're not walking into the unknown alone. You're walking with divine guidance. You're not moving in your own strength. You're moving in His power. Every moment of prayer strengthens your spirit, aligns your will with His, and builds a fortress of peace around your heart. When you rise and pray, you are saying to heaven, Lord, I depend on you. And when you do that, the Lord meets you there, with His presence, His power, and His peace. The enemy knows the strength of a praying person. That's why he tries to fill your mornings with hurry, your mind with worry, and your heart with distraction. But when you discipline yourself to rise and pray, you break through that resistance. You silence the lies of the enemy before they can even whisper. You take authority over the day before it takes authority over you. Prayer in the morning is your victory cry. It's the declaration that this day belongs to the Lord, not to fear, not to failure, not to defeat. When you rise in prayer, you are not just asking God for things. You are aligning your spirit with His presence. The moment you say, Father, heaven responds, angels move at His command, peace floods your soul, and faith begins to rise. You may not feel it at first, but as you continue to pray, something begins to shift inside you. Worry loses its grip. Confusion gives way to clarity. Weakness is replaced by strength. That's the power of meeting God in the morning. He changes the atmosphere of your heart before you ever step into the world. Some people say, I don't have time to pray in the morning. But let me tell you, you don't have time not to pray. The moments you spend with God are never wasted. They multiply back to you in strength, wisdom, and peace throughout the day. One moment in His presence can do more for you than hours of effort on your own. When you put God first, He orders your steps, He settles your mind, and He gives you favor in places where your own ability could never take you. Every day is a gift, but how you begin it determines how you'll walk through it. The Spirit of God is waiting every morning, waiting to commune with you, to refresh your soul, to empower your spirit. You don't need to pray fancy prayers. You just need to come with a sincere heart. Whisper His name, thank Him for His goodness, ask for His direction, listen for His voice, and as you do, the presence of God will fill your room, your heart, and your day. So when you open your eyes each morning, don't reach for your phone. Reach for His presence. Don't run to your plans, run to His throne. Rise and pray, for the Lord is already there, waiting to walk with you, to speak to you, and to strengthen you for what lies ahead. The presence of God awaits you. The morning is not just another part of the day. It carries a spiritual invitation that many overlook. When the first light of dawn breaks through the horizon, it is more than a natural occurrence. It is heaven's reminder that new mercies have arrived. God has designed the morning as a sacred time for divine connection, a time when our hearts are most open and our spirits most sensitive to His voice. The quiet before the world begins to stir is not emptiness, but an atmosphere charged with His presence, waiting for those who will respond to His gentle call to rise and pray. The stillness of early morning is not simply the absence of noise, but a divine opportunity to hear the whisper of the Spirit, to align one's heart before the rush of daily demands takes over. When we awaken and choose to meet with God before anything else, we acknowledge that He is our source and priority. The world teaches us to begin our day by checking our plans, our phones, or our responsibilities, but heaven teaches us to begin with prayer. That moment of surrender at the start of the day sets the tone for everything that follows. The first conversation you have each morning shapes your thoughts, your emotions, and your decisions throughout the day. If that conversation is with God, peace will guide you, wisdom will direct you, and faith will strengthen you. The Lord delights in those who seek Him early, not because He demands a schedule, but because He knows the value of undistracted time with Him. When you give Him the first part of your day, you invite His presence into every part of your day. The morning carries a special kind of purity. The air feels fresh, the mind feels clear, and the heart feels ready to receive. It is in those moments that God often speaks the loudest, not through thunder or dramatic signs, but through gentle impressions, quiet reminders, and divine encouragements that shape your walk with Him. When you start your day in His presence, you are strengthened before the challenges come. You are guided before decisions arise. You are filled before the world tries to drain you. That is why the Spirit continually calls believers to rise and pray, because there is strength waiting to be received and direction waiting to be revealed. God never forces His presence upon anyone, but He always waits for those who will respond to His call. Every morning, heaven watches for the ones who will set aside their comfort, rise before the noise of the world, and say, "Lord, I'm here." That simple act of devotion opens the door for divine encounters that shape your faith and deepen your intimacy with Him. The morning belongs to those who seek God early because in those sacred moments, the heart finds alignment, the spirit finds renewal, and the soul finds rest in the one who holds the day ahead. Prayer is the compass of the soul that points the day toward divine direction and peace. When you begin the morning with prayer, you're not simply performing a ritual. You're laying the foundation for how the entire day will unfold. The first moments of the day are the most powerful because they determine what voice will lead you, what thoughts will shape you, and what spirit will guide your actions. Prayer in the morning is like opening the windows of your heart to let the light of God shine in before the darkness of the world can cloud your mind. It establishes a spiritual rhythm, aligning your heart with heaven's agenda rather than your own plans or the pressures that await you. Before the calls come, before the world demands your attention, prayer secures your spirit in a place of strength and readiness. When you take time to pray at the beginning of your day, you're acknowledging that God is the source of all wisdom and guidance. You are saying, "Lord, I don't want to walk in my own understanding today. Lead me, guide me, and show me your way." That simple act of surrender brings clarity in confusion, peace in uncertainty, and confidence in moments where fear tries to take hold. Prayer is not only communication with God, it is divine positioning. It places you where you can hear His voice, discern His will, and move in His timing. The steps you take after you've prayed are different because they're not guided by impulse but by inspiration. Prayer doesn't just change situations, it changes how you see them, how you respond to them, and how you walk through them. The atmosphere of your day depends on what you allow into your heart first. If you wake up and start worrying, the day becomes heavy before it begins. But if you rise and start praying, your spirit is lifted and the weight of the world loses its grip. Prayer drives out anxiety and replaces it with assurance. It silences the voice of doubt and awakens the voice of faith. Every word spoken in prayer is a seed planted into the soil of the day. If you sow peace in the morning, you'll reap peace throughout the day. If you sow thanksgiving and praise, you'll find joy following you wherever you go. Prayer shapes not only your circumstances, but your character. It molds your attitude, your outlook, and your reactions long before you face anything. When the morning begins with prayer, you carry heaven's atmosphere into every place you go. You walk into your work with calm when others are anxious. You speak with grace when others are harsh. You make decisions with wisdom when others are confused. That is the power of beginning your day with God. It transforms the ordinary into the divine, the routine into revelation, and the day into an opportunity for His glory to shine through you. When you rise early to pray, you do more than start your day with discipline. You begin it with victory. The early hours are sacred because they are contested. The enemy knows the strength that comes from prayer, so he fights hardest to keep believers silent and distracted. He will whisper, "Sleep a little longer," or "You can pray later." But later never carries the same power as now. The morning belongs to those who understand that the first hour determines the outcome of the rest. When you choose to rise and pray, you are making a declaration that your spirit rules your flesh, that your faith is stronger than your feelings, and that your day belongs to the Lord. Every time you silence the voice of comfort and answer the call to prayer, you break through the fog of laziness and enter into the clarity of divine purpose. The enemy's strategy is to fill your mornings with rush and distraction because he knows that if he can steal your focus, he can weaken your faith before the day even begins. But prayer breaks his plan before it can take shape. When you pray early, you place a spiritual shield around your mind and your heart. You fortify your peace before fear can attack it. You secure your joy before circumstances try to steal it. Rising early to pray is not about earning favor with God. It's about positioning yourself to walk in the strength He has already given. Each morning becomes a spiritual battleground, and your decision to rise and pray is your declaration of victory before the fight even begins. Prayer is not passive, it's an act of warfare. It pushes back darkness and makes room for light. When you set aside time in the early hours, heaven takes notice. Angels are dispatched, burdens are lifted, and strength begins to flow. The power that is released in those quiet moments reaches far beyond the walls of your room. It touches your family, your work, your plans, and even the people you will meet throughout the day. Rising early to pray is sowing into the unseen, and what you plant in prayer, you will see unfold in power. Every victory in the day can be traced back to the time spent with God in the morning. It is there that you receive fresh oil for your spirit, direction for your path, and courage for your calling. It's not how long you pray, but how willing you are to meet with Him before the day begins. The flesh will always resist early prayer because it knows the reward that comes from it. But those who rise and pray discover that God meets them in that sacrifice with a presence so strong, it changes the course of the entire day. The atmosphere shifts, the heart strengthens, and faith comes alive when you start your morning on your knees. Time spent in the presence of God is never wasted because it renews the strength of your spirit, fills your heart with peace, and brings divine clarity to your mind. When you come before Him in the quiet of the morning, you exchange the weariness of yesterday for the freshness of today. Every moment in His presence cleanses away the residue of fear, confusion, and anxiety that tries to linger in your soul. It's like stepping into a refreshing stream that washes over your spirit, leaving you strengthened and steady. You may come to Him feeling heavy or unsure, but as you sit before Him, His presence begins to calm every storm within. There is something sacred about those still moments when you close your eyes, quiet your thoughts, and simply let your heart rest in the awareness that God is near. Peace is not something the world can give, and it's certainly not something it can maintain. True peace flows from the presence of God. When you meet Him in the morning, that peace becomes your foundation for the rest of the day. It guards your heart when pressures come and steadies your mind when distractions arise. The world may shift and shake, but the one who begins the day in God's presence walks in a calm that nothing can disturb. It is this peace that becomes your strength, because a peaceful heart cannot be easily shaken by fear. Every word of prayer, every moment of worship, draws you deeper into that peace until it fills every part of your being. You don't have to chase after calm. It comes when you stay in His presence. As you spend time with Him, strength begins to rise within you. Not the kind of strength that fades with fatigue, but the inner power that flows from the Spirit of God Himself. In His presence, weariness gives way to renewal, and weakness turns into confidence. It's not about trying harder, it's about receiving what He freely gives. The more time you spend with Him, the more you reflect His nature. His patience becomes your patience, His wisdom becomes your understanding, and His joy becomes your endurance. This is why the moments of prayer and stillness in the morning are so vital. They prepare your heart to walk in divine strength long before any challenge appears. Clarity also comes when you rest in His presence. Confusion fades and direction becomes clear. Many people rush into their day unsure of what to do or how to handle what awaits them. But those who wait on the Lord find that their path is illuminated. His presence aligns your priorities and sharpens your discernment. What once seemed complicated becomes simple when you see it through the lens of His Spirit. When you start your day with God, your thoughts are purified, your emotions are settled, and your decisions flow from wisdom rather than worry. When you make the choice to put God first in the morning, you are establishing a divine order for your entire day. The first act of the day reveals what matters most to you. When your first thoughts, your first words, and your first actions are directed toward God, you are declaring that He reigns over your time, your plans, and your priorities. It is not about routine or ritual. It is about relationship. The first fruits of your day belong to Him, and when you honor Him in that way, He honors you with favor and guidance throughout the rest of the day. God never overlooks the heart that seeks Him first. He takes the time you give Him and multiplies it back in ways you could never imagine. You may think you're losing time by praying, but in reality, you're gaining supernatural direction that saves you from unnecessary detours and mistakes later on. When you begin the morning by acknowledging God, you invite His presence into every part of your life. His favor starts to rest on your conversations, your work, your decisions, and even the smallest moments that seem insignificant. The Holy Spirit begins to guide your thoughts and nudge your heart, helping you make choices that align with God's will rather than your own impulses. This kind of divine partnership changes everything about the way you live. You begin to sense when to speak and when to stay silent, when to move forward and when to wait. You become sensitive to His leading because your heart has been tuned to His voice in prayer. The day doesn't control you. You walk through it with confidence, knowing that God has already gone ahead of you to prepare the way. Putting God first also reshapes your perspective. Instead of rushing into your day with stress or fear, you begin with peace and trust. When you start by looking at Him instead of your problems, your faith rises above your circumstances. You stop reacting to life and start responding with grace. The presence of God stabilizes your emotions and strengthens your thoughts, so that no matter what challenges come, you are anchored in His truth. Each morning becomes an opportunity to realign your heart with heaven's rhythm, to remember that you are not walking alone. The awareness of His presence turns ordinary moments into divine encounters and simple tasks into opportunities to glorify Him. The more consistently you put God first, the more evident His favor becomes in your life. Things begin to fall into place not because of luck or coincidence, but because you are walking in step with divine timing. Doors open that you could never force open. People cross your path who bring blessing and purpose. Problems that once seemed impossible begin to untangle. Favor is not just material. It's spiritual alignment that causes things to work together for your good. It is the peace that follows you, the strength that carries you, and the grace that surrounds you when you didn't even realize you needed it. When God is first, everything else falls into its rightful place. Guidance from God comes to those who make room for Him. The voice of the Spirit is clearest in hearts that are quieted before Him. Early morning prayer is the training ground where spiritual sensitivity is developed. You learn to recognize His whisper, to discern His peace, and to trust His timing. Decisions made after prayer carry a weight of wisdom that human reasoning can't match. You find yourself walking through the day with divine awareness, able to see things others overlook, able to sense danger before it appears, and able to recognize opportunities that align with God's will. This is not because of personal ability, but because of spiritual alignment born out of putting Him first. There is also a deep assurance that comes when you give God the first part of your day. You know that no matter what happens, you've already surrendered it into His hands. Worry begins to lose its grip because you've already placed your trust where it belongs. Each prayer, each moment of worship, builds a foundation of faith that carries you through the hours ahead. When the storms of the day arise, you're not shaken because you started anchored in His presence. The peace you received in the morning becomes your shield. The guidance you heard in prayer becomes your compass. The favor that rested on you becomes your covering. When you rise in the morning and put God first, heaven responds. You may not see it immediately, but the spiritual atmosphere shifts in your favor. Angels are sent on assignment. Divine protection is set in motion. Strength begins to flow into your heart, and wisdom begins to shape your steps. You don't just carry God's presence, you walk in it. The world around you feels the difference because a person who starts the day with God carries light wherever they go. That is why the presence of God awaits you each morning, ready to pour out grace, to speak peace, and to cover your day with His goodness.